great and the good of the business world rub shoulders in Davos. They'll have a wealth of economic data to ponder. Top of the list, slowing growth in China, as the world's second biggest economy stagnated in the final 3 months of last year, a result of the country's draconian zero-COVID policy. Still, the outcome was better than many analysts expected, and full-year growth hit 3%. That's well below the government's target, but the nation's top statistician didn't seem overly troubled about the nation's economic performance.
The national economy is resisting the pressure and continuing to develop, with the total economic volume reaching a new level. Employment and consumer prices were generally stable, and people's lives continued to improve. High-quality development has achieved new achievements, and the general economic and social situation is harmonious and stable. Preliminary calculations have been made, and this year's gross domestic product is 121 trillion yuan. At constant prices, an increase of 3% over the previous year.
And that's Kang Yi, who's the head of China's Statistics Bureau. Now let's return to London, where Arise correspondent Laurie Laird is standing by with more on this story and the rest of the day's business news. Great to see you again, Laurie. China releasing a lot of numbers today. What do these GDP data tell us?
Look, Charles, we always have to take Chinese GDP data with a bit of a grain of salt. And let's look at it. We're on the 17th of January, 16th, 17th of January, and we're getting fourth quarter full year data. So you know that this is a very, very preliminary set of data. Nonetheless, it showed that the Chinese performance over the course of 2023 or 2022, particularly the fourth quarter, were a whole lot better than private economists were looking for. Quarter-on-quarter growth in the fourth quarter, roughly unchanged, up more than 2% over the same period of a year ago. We know that the Chinese economy, or bits of the Chinese economy, were essentially closed during that fourth quarter. So to have a no change over Q3 and fairly robust year-on-year growth is really pretty outstanding and much, much better than anybody thought. So this is a good set of data. However, let me return to my opening comments. Do take these with a bit of a grain of salt. Now, over the full year, 3.3% or 3.0% growth is well below the Chinese target of 5.5%. Nobody expected China to hit that target. I suspect Chinese officials didn't expect that either. But this is a pretty healthy set of numbers for an economy that was in trauma last year due to those COVID lockdowns.
Well, absolutely, because we did say that China's economy stagnated because of that zero COVID policy. But now that it's been relaxed, Laurie, what can we expect?
And this is the question. We are talking about ancient history to a certain extent. What is happening now? This abrupt departure from the zero COVID policy is expected to give a huge burst of stimulus, a shot in the arm, steroids to the Chinese economy. And we already see bookings for overseas travel for Chinese just coming through the ceiling. Chinese cannot wait to travel again, which is extremely good news to the tourist places that receive Chinese tourists. Sellers of luxury goods will be absolutely delighted that Chinese buyers are able to travel and buy freely again. So there should be a very, very big boost to retail sales, consumer spending in the first quarter of this year for the Chinese economy. And that and the travel that I just mentioned will reverberate across the world. Chinese consumers will also buy more imports from other places in the world. So this will be a benefit not only for the Chinese economy, but for other economies around the world. A caveat here, not all quite good news. If the Chinese economy continues to recover, particularly the property sector. Now, the property sector has been hit by a lot of problems that didn't have much to do with COVID, but the government is doing a lot to try and support the property sector, which has really suffered over the past 2 years, even before COVID became a problem. If that sector were to revitalize in 2023, we are certainly going to see a greater Chinese demand for a lot of raw materials, oil, gas, copper, things that come out of the ground. If that were to be the case, we could certainly see an increase in price for those raw materials, which will make taming inflation in the rest of the world a lot more challenging.
Well, we'll certainly keep an eye on that. Let's turn to the UK, where you are, Laurie. The labour market doesn't appear to be showing any sign of recession.
Not in the least. I'm going to give you the so-called good news so far. Employment didn't fall, was largely unchanged in the UK in the latest 3 months. Unemployment rate at 3.7%. That's a little bit above the sort of historical low of 3.5% we saw a couple of quarters ago, but a 3.7% unemployment rate is really very, very low by historical standards in the UK. So the government can be quite, and the Bank of England can be quite comfortable that all of this talk of recession certainly hasn't hurt hiring yet. But there's the bad news, and I think that we're going to go on to this anyway. The bad news is that earnings are really rocketing in a way that is going to make the Bank of England very, very uncomfortable. Earnings up. I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you right now, Charles, and I'm sorry about this, but average earnings up 6.7% on a year-on-year basis. Now, that is one of the highest growth numbers ever recorded. But let's put inflation into that, and that means earnings actually fell by almost 3% once adjusted for inflation.
Well, as you said, Laurie, the Bank of England will be pretty concerned about those numbers. We've got about 30 seconds or so. Strike action, of course, set to intensify this month.
Absolutely. And there are things in these numbers that came out today that will, I think, further infuriate strikers. Public sector wages only rising by a little over 3%. While private sector wages up more than 7%, and that will certainly fuel the ire, the frustration, the grievances of public sector workers. And there have been a host of strikes announced over the past couple of days, and I'm sure you and I will be discussing this in the days and weeks to come.
Indeed. Laurie, thanks very much indeed. Laurie Laird in London.